I got some more Titanic facts that I didn't know until this week. Really cool story about the Titanic's wireless communication room and the guys that worked tirelessly as long as they could in there. So Titanic had this state-of-the-art technology, which was a wireless, and it was manned by 2 people every day, and passengers could send messages from the ship back home or wherever they wanted. The messages could go for nearly 2,000 mile range and be picked up by other wireless receivers. So this was like new technology. It was really expensive though. It cost about 50p, about 60 cents per word to send somebody a message. So that's a really expensive postcard. Okay, really quickly, the story of Jack Phillips and Harold Bride, who were the 2 guys who were working the wireless that night and stayed up as late as they possibly could and were trying to send emergency messages until the power went down. And then they had to try and get off the ship, and unfortunately Jack Phillips didn't make it. Harold, however, did, but very nearly died. So he had to jump from the ship and he got stuck under like a capsized lifeboat. And so he was in the water, stuck underwater, but he managed to escape, get out and get into another lifeboat. But he got frostbite on his legs and feet. Now, he then got rescued the next day by the Carpathia, the ship that came to collect all of the survivors, and he went straight to work. So not only had he been up a whole day and a whole night, he went straight to work in the Carpathia, trying to relay as much information to the mainland about the accident and what happened, and trying to let everybody know, families of the survivors, that they were alive. What's crazy is he was 22 years old and had only been out to sea 7 times. So he was a newbie, hadn't even been employed by White Star for a year. Now, by a weird turn of events, his friend, another guy called Harold, was the only working wireless man in the Carpathia. So he literally turned up and found his friend, and then they worked together for the rest of the days, trying to relay the survivor messages. What a dude. Now, unfortunately, the wireless technology wasn't super reliable. It was still in its sort of infancy. And there was mass confusion between the White Star company in New York and getting the messages. So initially, it was reported, and White Star did a statement saying, Titanic has been damaged, but all passengers survived and have been transferred to other boats. So don't worry, no loss of life, all good here. Don't worry. They've been put onto 2 boats that are going to Halifax. So we're going to send a train to Halifax to collect all the 2,000 people that were on the Titanic, and we're going to bring them back. That's not what happened. And for a while, they stuck to this storyline with the head guy of White Star making an official statement to the press and the public, saying, I have full faith that the Titanic, even though it's damaged, will not sink because it is unsinkable. So the only reason that we can't have communication with them right now must be some sort of atmospheric conditions. I'm sure there's a really good reason for it. I'm not panicking. You shouldn't panic. So everyone was like, okay, cool. However, the way that the wireless system worked is you didn't send it to like another direct private wireline. You just sent it out into the ether. So anybody who could receive wireless signals could receive, in theory, any wireless signal. So the New York Times picked up on the live distress calls of the Titanic, and they were able to piece together what was happening. And so they were able to break the news that Titanic had gone down and not many people had survived, and it was a disaster of all disasters, which was really embarrassing for White Star and everyone who had just announced that everybody was fine. They had to then backtrack and do another statement to be like, my bad, got it wrong. Also, what's really sad is in all this communication confusion, there was accounts where people who had survived were marked down as dead, and their families had got the news via the wireless that they had died, and also vice versa. Families had got the news that people had survived and had made the survivor list on Carpathia, but they hadn't, and they had to wait until New York to realise that their person wasn't coming home, which is really sad. Oh, but shout out to Jack and Harold and the other Harold who between the three of them, did an amazing job of instigating the rescue from Carpathia and tirelessly working in the days after to try and communicate the gravity of what happened and let people know if their loved ones were still alive. So, RIP, guys.